This is the third video we made to demonstrate the relationship between the geographic location and economic performance. In the previous two videos, we've discussed that in the tropical area, people will have a more difficult time saving, and they are also exposed to more diseases than other parts of the world. So that both um, have a detrimental influence upon their economic prosperity in the long term. Here in this video, we're going to take a different angle looking at the role of geographic location. We want to drive your attention to a pair of countries. The first one is Great Britain. We all know that that's where the Industrial Revolution took place first. Okay? The second country is Japan, which is the first Asian economy becoming industrialized. What are the geographical similarities between these two countries? Again, pause the video and think about it. What are the geographical similarities between these two economies? Now, the first one is both are island economies, right? They're both surrounded by water, right? Is that good or bad for long-term economic performance? They're surrounded by water, so they are isolated somewhat, right? But let's think about this. If you were a businessman in Spain, okay, you produced something which you find there's a huge market in Russia, okay? So you want to ship your goods from Spain to Russia. Now, the first way you could take is you could follow the land road. So you could go from Spain to France, Belgium, Germany, Poland, all the way into Russia, right? The second way is you can take the water road, okay, from here and go up there on the sea and eventually to Russia. Which way do you think is better? Okay. Now, in history, businessmen find that the waterway is better for multiple reasons. The first one is when you take the land road, you would find that there are a lot of things you have to cope with. Okay, different languages, different culture, different governments, right? Every time when you step into a territory of another country, you have to pay taxes or tariffs, right? And you could also, get in trouble if you are not familiar with their cultures or traditions. Okay? But when you take the water road on the sea, you don't have any kind of, that kind of problems, right? You might still have to, be encountering with pirates or some of these terrible weathers on the sea, right? But compared to, the troubles you could have on the land, that would be much easier to deal with or much lower risk. So we find that most businessmen take the waterway. Okay. Now let's come back and look at um, Great Britain and Japan. Both are surrounded by water, right? It's actually an advantage for them to be involved in global trade. Okay? You would find that Great Britain benefited a lot from the transatlantic trade, okay, between the United States and Europe. Japan also benefited a lot from uh, the trade between the United States or Europeans with Chinese. Okay, actually, when Europeans and Americans went to Japan, the very first time they took Japan as a stepping stone um, to the Chinese market or the Asian market. Okay, uh, so here we said that another reason, people prefer the waterway or ocean shipment is because it's cheaper. Okay, especially when you think about these gigantic cargo ships these days. Okay, and they can ship the goods from one place to another across the globe in an extremely cheap way. There was a survey many years ago looking at the all of this stuff sold at Walmart. They find that more than 95% of them made their way to Walmart through the ocean transportation. Okay, so it's safer. The water transportation is safer and it's cheaper. Okay, so that's why here we said for UK and Japan, it's actually an advantage for them, especially to be involved in global trade. Okay, now when these two economies are actively involved in the global trade, it's not just buy or sell, or when we talk about the trade deficit, okay, like how much money we owe or how much money we make from other countries. uh, for international trade, what really matters is the flow of ideas. Okay, it's just like on the Saturday morning, when we go to the local farmers market with our parents or grandparents, you would find that over there people are not just buying or selling stuff, they also talk to each other. Okay, so when we get involved in a trade, we are exchanging the ideas. Okay, that's quite important for technological innovation, right? And so that's why here we find that UK had the very first industrial revolution in human history, right? And Japan becomes industrialized before any other Asian economies because they have a pretty open mind. Okay, they know what's going on out there, and that put them in a much better place than the other economies. Okay. Now here you probably thought, I intentionally pick this pair of countries to um, get the point across. But we actually have more evidence, very solid evidence to show that, if you have a good geographic location, then you are more likely to be involved in global trade and you could enjoy the long-term economic prosperity from that. Now, the first piece of evidence I want to show you is if we just, look at the continent instead of countries, because the countries, you might say, I cherry picked these pair of countries. Let's look at the continent. Let's compare between Europe, especially West Europe and Africa. Um, the first thing we compare is their land area. if Europe is 1, Africa is 8. In other words, Africa is 8 times larger than Europe. The second thing we want to compare is the length of their coastline. Okay, you probably won't believe this, but if you measure it on the map, okay, inch by inch, you would find that the European coastline is actually at least 80% longer than African's coastline. Now, why we want to look at the length of the coastline? Because the longer the coastline, the more ports you're going to see. So that gives, again, the local economy or the country more chances to be involved in global trade. Okay, so that's one piece of evidence. The second piece of evidence is here. Let's look at these landlocked countries around the globe. All of these purple ones are landlocked. By that we mean they don't have even 1 mile of coastline. They don't have any ports, okay, seaports. Now, when you look at these countries, you would find here Chad, right, Zimbabwe, and some of these Central Asian economies. All of them are extremely poor ones. Okay? In other words, they are not, like because they are landlocked, so they do not have very good chances to involve in trade. So generation by generation, they are not just landlocked, they are actually mind-locked. Okay, so they don't know what was going on out there. They don't even want to know what was going on out there. Okay, so that's how they kind of falling behind in terms of their economic performance. Okay. Now, up to this point, we already talked about several very interesting theories or explanations about why geographical location matters. Okay. Now, when we say other determinants of economic performance, we also mean economic political institutions or legal systems and other things. Okay. Here we have pretty much finished this chapter. Okay, it's actually 2 chapters, chapter 2 and chapter 12. Okay, both are about economic growth. Okay, chapter 2 we focus upon the PPF and its application to explain economic growth. Chapter 12 is more about policy centered. Okay, what specific policies we're supposed to use to promote economic growth. Okay, the very last thing I want to say is, based upon our discussion about geographic location, you are probably under the impression that, oh, this is too bad, for these sub-Saharan African economies or some Asian economies, some South American economies, they are falling behind economically because that's their destiny. They're supposed to be poor because of the geographical locations. I don't take it that way. I think today, in the 21st century, okay, for example, if we think about saving, we said that that West African fishermen had a more difficult time save. Now we already get the fridge, we get other new technologies to overcome these difficulties. So I do believe that in the future, these economies should have a very bright or very good economic potential to grow. Okay,